Okay, I'm now recording the lecture. I will talk in this short podcast lecture, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, about the Premiere Pro interface and also about a number of shortcuts that I think you guys will find effective. So I already talked in some previous lectures about this space here, the vectors that you use to get through Premiere Pro. I wanted to show you, for example, that if you're doing audio work, and you click on the audio panel, it changes and you get the essential audio tools here. Now, until you've selected something that you want to work on, this audio panel is darkened out. But once I've selected a clip, then I can go into dialogue and I can change all kinds of things, not only volume, but I can enhance it for different types of speech. I can change the size of the room that I'm talking in. I do this, basically, it's a pretty easy thing to do, and I do this for the lectures that I post because if I don't like the way they sound, if I have to stop and start, if there's a mistake with the screen share, and when I go in and fix that, I also fix that using the essential sound panel. And this is basically a great way of making a quick fix that you don't have to take to Audition. Now, I will say, I find the bridge to Audition to be the most straightforward, simplest, best designed interface in almost all of this software. So my taste, I almost never use this. I instead do the right click and I edit clip in Adobe Audition. And I've already done a lecture on that in the podcast, so I'm not going to dwell on that. But I just want you to know that it's so simple to do and that you really should be doing audio editing in Audition, even if you're just kind of playing around and trying to learn how it works. We'll focus on this next semester. That's really where we learn a lot about audio editing. So anyways, back to this interface. The color tab is great. And if I want to do simple color correction, I can do things like I can go into the basic correction menu, white balance, I can change the tones, exposure, all that stuff. I have to have something selected for it to work. Again, if I'm not in one of the clips, it will just, this will be darkened out. So assembly, learning, these are definitely for beginners. The three interfaces that I like the best are editing, color, and audio. And then finally with graphics, if you click on that, you'll notice that it has a ton of presets already made. Sorry, there's a delay here. A ton of presets already made where you can find many really nice looking lower thirds, credits, all that kind of stuff that you can just drop into your movie. And this is kind of capstone level graphics. I mean, maybe a professional graphic artist would want to do their own, would want to make up their own font, would want to design it themselves. But short of that, this is a great tool. So the graphics tab here. Now, as I said a moment ago, I intentionally changed the interface because I was looking at something and I thought, oh, I'm going to leave that changed because I want to be able to show students how you can manipulate this. So say I want to spend some time looking in my bin and it was too small before. I do edit lectures here in this timeline. I deleted them all out because I didn't want to clutter the space up. But when I have material in there, like this lecture that I'll do today that I'm going to cut tonight, it will live in this UMD lectures folder that I have here in this bin. And if you watched the podcast lecture I did on the file tree, you'll know why I find this to be so useful. It's important to know where things are. So I find this kind of file tree to be really helpful, and I talk about that in one of the podcast lectures, so I'm not going to dwell on it. But what I wanted to show you is once you're in this mess, right, and you can't find where you are, you can't find your tools, you click through here and you go to the editing menu and it's still not right, the Save Me button is here in Window. So you go to Window, you go to Workspace, and you go to Reset to Save Layout. Now, every professional editor that I know does not use the default saved layout. They have their own interface. They know where they want their shortcuts. They know where to put them. And so they create a layout that they want to go back to and it will be in this queue. So for example, I could have a layout that I add that says Adam's lecture workflow or something like that. So that every time I was editing a lecture, I could go to that layout and I can reconfigure the space as I wanted. But for us as beginners, workspace, editing, reset to save layout, and now I'm back to where we started from. And here, this is such a relief when you're a beginning editor to know, oh yeah, I can get back to where I know where everything is. Toolkit here. The bin is here. The preview window, program window, timeline, audio meters. Okay, I know where all that is. Hallelujah. So that's a great shortcut, a great fix. So that's the interface. And I want to talk about a few more things, and then I talk about a few tools that I want you to use as well. So you'll notice that at the bottom of this window, and anytime there's video, you'll see this same bar in this window if there were video in here. And you see the bar. It's hard to tell because I'm screen sharing, but you've also got a scrubber bar here. And what that scrubber bar does, it allows you to move through this space in a very particular way. So you only go to the front of the movie if the scrubber bar is all the way at frame 0. That gets you to the front of the movie, and this lets you see your entire timeline. Now, if you're in the space and you use the plus or minus, the minus or the equal key, really, they will let you move through this scrubber bar pretty easily. So I'm using the plus key to move in. I'm using the minus key to move out, in and out. Same thing here. If I go into this box, I can move in and out on the scrubber bar using plus and minus. So that's an awesome tool. Now I want to show you one more thing. Let's use the tilde grav key, which is in the top left corner, and let's make the box, our timeline box, full screen. Now you can do the same thing with your program window. So if I go back out, I click in the program window, I hit tilde grav, there it is. Program window is now full screen. I hit it again, I go back. But I'm going to show you something really useful in this window. So I'm in my timeline, and I've got a lot of information here that is really deeply compressed. If I hit the shift key and the plus, I've now opened up all of these timelines. So you see that they're no longer compressed here. If I hit the shift and minus, I go back to fully compressed video lines and audio lines. So this gives me a chance to see the whole movie, and shift plus gives me a chance to really see what I'm working on. So this is extremely useful because unless you've opened up these tracks, you can't see the tools in here. You can't see the effects tools that live here. There are effects tools in the video box. Let's see, let's minimize this. Let's see, you see all these effects tools that are here. You can do things like opacity changes. You can do audio changes. All that stuff only happens when you open up these tracks. So again, if I go to minimum size, I can't see anything, right? I can't see any of my audio tools. I can't see any of my video tools. When I open them up, I now see the ability to change volume levels, to mix out of music, and to change what's happening to my video in any given moment. So I can change the height of tracks. I can change how much of the scrubber bar I'm looking at using keyboard shortcuts, or just using the scrubber bar itself. I can, for example, grab it here. I can also do the same thing with my tracks. If I'm in the track and I'm at the bottom of it, I can open that way up and I can really see what I'm working on. So many editors work in this kind of workflow where you minimize everything except what you're actually doing right now. So if I were to minimize all and then go over and just maximize my volume track, let's say this is this looks like it might be a sound effects track. Let's say sound effects are on A2. Then I could do work in this that's really fine, really detailed, and really good mixing. So that's one of the most important things that you can do in your timeline. Change the size and look all the way down. And I will say I want to show you one more important thing because it's kind of a philosophical uh, aspect of editing. I have taken my scrubber bar and gone all the way down to the individual frames. So now if I move through this, I'm moving through one frame at a time. And this is where you have to do editing. Because if you don't, if you're just randomly dropping down and putting in a cut point, you're going to miss the mark, and you're going to add flash frames, or you're going to clip off somebody's audio. So you have to work in the minimum possible space. Now, that's when you make the edit, and then you'll very often have to now go back out to make sure that you're in the right space, to remember where you are. So you become, basically, as part of the workflow, you are going back and forth between all the way down to one frame and working one frame at a time, to all the way to the wider part of this and doing multiple frames. You can, for example, go edit to edit. I can, by using the up arrow, I'm going edit to edit. I can go edit to edit this way. But when I'm actually making cuts, I have to do it on the individual frame. It's just a waste of time if you make a mistake, because then you have to go back and fix the mistake. So it's always better to work on the individual frame. And I want to show you why. I want to look at the audio track. And very often, when I'm mixing audio, I have to get on the exact word. So I produce a talk show. I work in collaboration with a professional editor. But very often, I'm the person going in and saying, okay, let's end this paragraph with this sentence and this exact word. And I'll go through and I'll mark that exact word. So if I put my end point here, for example, I know that I'm probably in the middle of a word or a sound. So what I need to do is I need to go all the way down to the individual frame, and I need to find where that waveform bottoms out. So now by coming to the bottoming out of the waveform, I am most likely between two words. And that's why you do this kind of individual frame editing, and that's why you're so careful with bringing these tracks open and close, so that you're not putting an edit here in the middle of a word that should have gone here between two words. So I hope you guys can see that. It's pretty straightforward and pretty clear once you know what you're looking for. And again, if we were to look at a dialogue track in this edit, let's look here at a dialogue track. Here we're really seeing what's naturally occurring sound bites in this track. And you know, if I were to go here and I had to make a cut, you really see it. You see where the talking stops and starts. And so a cut right there is perfect. Put in an endpoint. A cut somewhere in here is terrible, because now I've come in the middle of a word. It's going to be jarring for an audience. It's going to jar you as the producer's ear. You never, ever, ever want to do that. So part of your workflow is, let's find this exact spot. Let's be careful. Let's put our endpoint right here. And now let's say the opposite. Let's say I'm working at this and I want to kind of try to find a point, but I didn't feel like minimizing the timeline. Let's say I put an endpoint here. I'm willing to bet that we are right in the middle of a word. And so that's why you do this kind of work, where you find that exact moment. So anyways, let me move on. Enough of that. I want to talk a little bit about some other tools for how you can move through your movie one frame at a time. And that's this tool here. This lets you go forward one frame. And you can see where, when you're cutting, you want that the ability to go exactly through the movie. And it's a good time to say that with Premiere Pro, every single tool has multiple ways of getting there. So for example, you can, if you hit the end key, you move one frame. You can also get that one frame here by doing that. Okay, so with almost every tool, you're going to find that it's got multiple ways of making that edit. And just like the end and the home keys, if you do page up or page down, that's where you get to move between multiple edits. So these 4 arrow directional keys on your keyboard in the lower right corner are really useful for doing the kind of professional editing which is done almost fully from the keyboard. And I say this all the time in my classes. A producer like me is a very visual editor, but a professional editor does almost everything with their fingertips on the keyboard. It's almost like a professional typist can, use all 10 fingers. A professional editor can do the same thing. So I've been in a room with an editor that can work lightning fast just from the keyboard, never grabbing the mouse and moving it through the space. Okay, a couple other notes, keyboard shortcuts. If I use the J key, I go backwards. If I hit the J key multiple times, I go backwards super fast. K stops me. L is the same thing in the opposite direction. The L key moves me forward. If I hit L multiple times, I move forward super fast. And again, K stops that. So JKL is a great tool for scrubbing through your movie. It's especially useful when you're doing a sort of rough look at what you've got. It's like podcast lectures. I know you guys can, in Panopta, you guys can listen to lectures at 1.5 times speed. Sometimes that's just a better way to engage with it. And there are times when the better way to engage with your timeline is JKL, using those keyboard shortcuts to get through quickly forward, or in the case of the J button, 1, 2, 3 times quickly backward. I use it all the time when I'm cutting. Another, and I've only got about 5 minutes left of these shortcuts, and I'll stop this lecture and then post it. But another tool that's incredibly useful is the Memo Tool. So, so let's say I'm in a movie, I'm working with somebody else, like I'm the producer, they're the editor, we've got a director, we've got an associate producer. Say it's a team of 5 or 6 people, and I want everybody to know that I need something changed here. We didn't have the rights to this music. Please take it out. This shot is not color corrected, right? Or the color correction disappears 5 frames before the shot ends. That happens a lot when somebody doesn't go all the way down to a single frame. So as a producer, I can leave a note for the whole team in the timeline using the M key. So a couple shortcuts to get there. Control A lets me highlight the entire timeline. So I can do Control A and I can get the entire timeline highlighted. And once I've got the entire timeline highlighted, I can hit M for memo, and it puts a memo at that point in the timeline. Now, I do that specifically because if I haven't highlighted the entire timeline and I want to leave a note, say I've got just this clip highlighted, I leave a note now, and it puts that note in the clip. So you see the marker here versus the marker here. So highlighting everything gives me a marker for the whole movie, a chapter marker, and highlighting just the clips gives me a marker in that clip, so an editor can see, if I have this needs to be color corrected, but everything else is fine, or this music should be remixed. There's a marker for that moment. So once I put a marker in, you simply double click on it, and that opens a dialog box that lets you leave a note. So let's say fix color. I have a color code that I want to do. I want to make it a chapter marker so that it moves with my cuts, and there we go. So now I've got a marker on that part of the movie that the editors, everybody on the team can see, and we all know that has to be fixed before the film gets sent out. And now and also, one last note about markers. When I export this movie, I don't have to remove the markers because they will not show up in the film. The markers will be just in the timeline. They will not be in the movie. So you don't have to worry about taking them off once whatever that work is has been finished. And just 30 seconds more and I'll be done. I want to talk about a couple other keyboard shortcuts. Just know that the letter I is what gives you an in point. The letter O gives you an out point, in and out. The tilde grav key gives you full screen or not full screen. I love Command A and Command K because they really help me to move around a nearly finished project. So let's say I'm going to make this full screen. Let's go Command A or Control A if you're on a PC. Control A, I get the entire timeline. And if I go to a specific point and hit Control K, I've now put a razor cut through the entire movie at that exact frame, right? That's a really useful tool. I'm going to undo this, but I could say put a razor cut here, Control K, a second razor cut there. Oh no, I have to highlight it all, sorry. Control A, you have to highlight the whole thing, Control K, and now what I've got is I've got this little piece that I could theoretically pull out of this film on those two razor cuts. So that's a really useful keyboard shortcut. And with that, I'll end this this podcast lecture. So just bear with me 1 second.